Hyundai are aiming high with the improved version of their TL series Tucson, a stylish, sharp-suited family mid-sized SUV aimed at the Qashqai class. We're told it'll change the way you drive. It's certainly changing this Korean brand's fortunes in this sector.
In an era where nearly a quarter of all European car buyers are looking at something from the SUV crossover class, mainstream brands need to take this segment very seriously. Now, Hyundai is doing just that with this car, the Tucson. In this TL series form, it was originally launched in 2015, but this is the much improved version of that car that the brand introduced in 2018. Hyundai has been offering crossovers in the mid-sized Qashqai class SUV-C segment since the first generation JM series Tucson, which was sold between 2004 and 2009. That contender was replaced by a far more competitive LM series model, which the brand chose to badge iX35 for Europe, and which campaigned until the original version of this TL series design made its debut, at which point the Tucson badge reappeared. Now, this more recent Tucson has done well for the brand, with over 600,000 sales in its first 3 years, thanks to higher quality, extra technology, greater standards of safety, more space and sharper driving dynamics. As part of the midterm update that we're going to look at here, quite a lot's been changed to improve it. Buyers are offered an all-new entry-level diesel engine and even the option of mild hybrid diesel technology for the first time. In addition, there's smarter looks, more safety kit and extra media connectivity. Plus, you can now have features that used to be the preserve of bigger luxury SUVs, things like full LED headlights, adaptive cruise control and a surround view camera system. Mind you, these days this Hyundai is priced to reflect that level of prowess, the Korean brand having long abandoned its bargain basement beginnings. Can what's on offer in this improved model really justify that and offer a genuine alternative to the established players in the sector? Time to find out. You won't be buying a mid-sized family SUV of this kind prioritising an overtly sporty driving experience, but in recent times, contenders in this class like Seat's Attica have showed that a surprising degree of responsiveness is possible from a crossover of this kind. Now, this Tucson isn't quite in that class, but it might surprise you with just how close it gets to delivering family hatchback-style driving dynamics, to the point where if you're coming to this Hyundai fresh from a spell in something from the more conventional Focus or Astra sector, you'll find that very little acclimatisation is required. Plenty of work's gone into improving the engineering of this enhanced TL Series Tucson model, and some of that's paid off immediately. Into that category falls the new SmartStream Series 1.6-litre CRDI diesel engine, which is quieter and more flexible than the rumbly 1.7-litre unit it replaces. It comes with much the same two outputs of that older power plant, a 115 PS version that few will want, and a 136 PS variant that gives you the option of 7-speed automatic transmission should you require that. The base version of this diesel makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 11.8 seconds on the way to 109 miles an hour. The perkier 136 PS version improves those figures to 11.2 seconds and 112 miles an hour. Hyundai dealers who are looking to serve the increasing number of customers seeking petrol power in this class of car may be disappointed to find that the old, normally aspirated 1.6-litre GDI 132 PS engine continues at the foot of the range. Now, we'd hope that the more modern 1-litre TGDI turbo petrol power plant from the i30 might have made an appearance as part of this package of updates. Perhaps this Tucson model's extra 200 kilos of weight was just too much for that, though. Anyway, the 1.6-litre GDI unit was one of the Tucson models a few weak links before, and it still is. It lacks torque, refinement, and any sort of eagerness when it comes to overtaking performance. The stats, rest to 62 in 11.5 seconds on the way to 113 miles an hour, don't look too bad on paper, but on the road, almost any sort of short-notice overtaking manoeuvre has to be carefully planned, as you might expect, given that this GDI unit has only half the amount of pulling power that you get in the comparable SmartStream diesel. There is an alternative turbocharged 1.6-litre TGDI petrol engine on offer that puts out 177 PS and solves some of those issues. Here, torque rises from the GDI unit's meagre 161 Nm to a much healthier 256 Nm, and that's enough to improve the rest of 62 figure to 9.2 seconds and the top speed to 126 miles an hour. The problem is, though, that TGDI unit retails at a significant price premium. Still, in this guise, your Tucson will feel a little lighter on its feet through the bends thanks to a curb weight reduction of 37 kilos over the 1.6-litre diesel model. Today, we're not sampling any of the engines I just mentioned. Instead, the power plant in this particular Tucson is one that aims to silence diesel doubters. Now, wouldn't an efficient black pump fueled unit boosted with a degree of electrification be an ideal solution for an SUV of this kind? Well, Hyundai certainly thinks so, and they've installed such a thing at the top of the Tucson range, replacing the conventional 2-litre diesel unit that was offered before. This so-called mild hybrid diesel uses a 2-litre CRDI engine too, but in this case it's paired with what Hyundai calls a mild hybrid starter generator, or MHSG unit, which is linked up to a compact little 48-volt lithium-ion battery. The MHSG package is connected by belt to the engine's crankshaft, and on the move it switches seamlessly between its generator and motor settings. When decelerating, under braking, or when coasting, the generator mode recuperates energy from the crankshaft to charge the battery. Now that energy is then deployed under acceleration as part of the motor mode, and the additional 16 PS that this provides reduces the load on the engine, which will therefore save a significant amount of fuel, well, in theory anyway. The battery and the MHSG also support a moving stop and start function, which automatically turns off the engine during in-gear deceleration and braking, providing that the lithium-ion battery is sufficiently charged. Now, to be frank, we haven't noticed that happening very much during the period of our test. What we have noticed, though, is the extra refinement of this variant. It can be quieter for more of the time because the electrical assistance means the engine has to stretch itself less often. Complementing this is the swift, unintrusive cog-swapping nature of the 8-speed auto transmission that's been specifically developed for this particular variant and which kicks down without fuss when required. Like the ordinary 7-speed DCT auto, it features a selectable sport mode for sharper kickdown. That battery power boost increases the 185 PS 2-litre diesel engine's output to around 200 PS, but the quoted performance stats, a 9.5 second rest to 62 miles an hour time on the way to top speed of 125 miles an hour, are pretty much the same as they were in the previous non-hybrid 2-litre diesel model. That's probably because of the extra weight that the electrified powertrain has to carry around with it. The extra bulk doesn't do much for the efficiency stats either, all of which leads us to think that this technology might work rather better mated up with some of Hyundai's less powerful engines. Ideally, that extra electrical power boost would, for example, be perfect to help deal with the torque deficiencies of the base 1.6-litre GDI petrol unit that we referenced earlier. That power plant, though, is a bit old to be tampering with. Hyundai says that the next target for the mild hybrid tech is the SmartStream series 1.6-litre CRDI diesel we referenced earlier, and we look forward to trying that. When the mild hybrid tech does eventually extend across the powertrain lineup, we'll get a proper chance to see just how much real-world benefit it can provide. Enough with engines, though. What about the way this Tucson drives? Well, when we first tried this car back in 2016, we didn't think that the ride comfort it offered was too bad by class standards, but things have moved on since then, and by today's standards, well, the suspension setup does seem a touch on the firm side. Not everyone will like that, and there's no optional adaptive damping system to soften things up if you don't. To be fair, though, you could live quite happily with it. The ride only becomes really unsettled over really rough stretches of road, or particularly overt potholes or speed humps, especially if you happen to be in a variant fitted with the larger 18 or 19-inch wheel rims. Still, at least that approach to damping doesn't deliver roly-poly body roll, so when you're on a twisting secondary route, running late for the station, or the school pickup, or ballet classes, delete as appropriate, you shouldn't leave your second row occupants feeling too queasy. If you do feel the need to drive in this way, then you'll actually find there's quite a lot of traction on offer. An ATCC, Advanced Traction Cornering Control System, uses torque vectoring technology to lightly brake the inner wheel at speed through tight bends and transfers torque to the outside front wheel that can better use it. Unfortunately, the rather vague electric power steering doesn't really incentivize you to exploit those limits. You can tell that Hyundai's aware of this because the brand has equipped most models with a flex steer system that allows you to alter steering weight, but weight isn't the same as steering feel, and until this Korean brand's engineers understand that, this Tucson won't offer any particular attraction for those who really value their driving enjoyment. Now, we haven't yet talked about all-wheel drive, and that's because most versions of this Tucson don't offer it. From the launch of this facelifted TL series model, the only variant in the range to be equipped with 4x4 traction was the top 2-litre CRDI mild hybrid diesel version, the car we're trying here. That's unlikely to be an issue for the Korean brand in this segment, though. Quite a few cars in this class don't offer any kind of all-wheel drive system at all. As you'd expect, the all-wheel drive system you do get on this top 2-litre diesel version is very much tarmac oriented. It's one of those that keeps you front driven most of the time, but when traction fails, it can instantly send up to 40% of torque to the rear axle. Leave the system alone and it'll make all the decisions for you, but if you do want to intervene, then you can at speeds below 25 miles an hour put it in a lock mode with 50% of power going to either end of the car should you end up with your Tucson somewhere that you really shouldn't have taken it in the first place. You would want to try to avoid that kind of scenario though. Ground clearance is limited to 172 mils. That's 18 mils lower than a rival Renault Qashqai, for example. As a result, the off-road stats, an approach angle of 17.2 degrees, departure angle of 23.9 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 18.6 degrees are all predictably modest, although downhill brake control is provided to ease you down slippery slopes. We can't imagine too many potential owners will care very much though. Yes, you will need to leave the Serengeti to run our fines, but curbs can be mounted and muddy car parks can be traversed with impunity. Probably of more relevance is this car's potential towing capacity, which, as you'd expect, varies depending on the engine that you choose. This 2-litre diesel mild hybrid and the manual 1.6-litre TGDI petrol variants can tug along up to 1.9 tonnes, but the base 1.6-litre petrol GDI can deal with no more than 1.4 tonnes. Still, we don't expect to see many Tucsons pulling along horse boxes or jet skis. This car will instead remain a staple of the school run, and for that, the right kind of customer might think it to be pretty much ideal. More than anything else, it's probably the design of this Tucson that'll do most to interest SUV buyers in the mid-size segment. The styling's been clearly inspired by the brand's larger and very good-looking Santa Fe SUV, and with flowing surfaces, bold proportions and sharp lines, it delivers one of the more attractive cars in this class. Especially here at the front, which now features the brand's signature cascading grille, in this case flanked by restyled headlights incorporating revised daytime running lights. Full LED headlamp technology is now available on top variants like this one, and all variants feature front fog lights, and most also get this lower skid plate, which is supposed to enhance this model's crossover credentials and give it a wider and more dynamic stance. In profile, this Hyundai remains very much a product of crossover consumerism. It looks gym-toned and Qashqai-like. Customers now choose from a revised range of wheels, varying in size between 16 and 19 inches. We've got the 18-inch rims here. As before, the way that the roof falls away towards the rear combines with this rising window line and these prominent side creases to create an athletic feel. The wheel arches, they're emphasised in the way that you'd expect them to be on this class of car, while the Z-style character lines below the C-pillar create quite a powerful stance. Otherwise, as we did when we originally tested this TL Series Tucson in 2016, what we most need to draw to your attention is the slight size increase this car enjoys over comparably sized and priced cheaper mid-sized SUV models. The standard version's 4,475mm length makes it 81mm longer than a Nissan Qashqai and 112mm longer than a Seat Ateca. The segment rivals that are longer than a Tucson, Ford Kuga or a Mazda CX-5, for example, all cost significantly more. The rear styling, although it's neat, isn't quite as arresting, although the rear lamps have been restyled and they now feature LED lighting on most variants. The tailgate now gets a split line above the registration plate, flowing into these corner reflectors here. And the bumper's been revised, as have the tailpipes. There's a smart roof spoiler, and this shark fin antenna adds a finishing touch. Time to look inside. Take a seat behind the wheel and you get the commanding view over the traffic that SUV drivers like so much in a cabin that's smart and logically laid out. For this revised model, the brand's redesigned the upper dashboard using higher quality materials with a double stitching line. Now true, the splashes of metallic bright work you'll find around the fascia may clearly be painted plastic, but they've been carefully chosen. And the fit and finish from the Slovakian factory is excellent, to the point where, to be honest, the soft touch textures on offer around the dash show a lot of better established brands how it should be done. This leather-lined premium spec variant feels particularly nice, but as part of the changes made to the lineup, Hyundai has also upped the spec of base models, whose Spartan feel we did criticise when we originally tried this car. As before, the focal point of the centre console is this floating infotainment system screen, which is 7 inches in size with entry-level trim, but as here, 8 inches in size elsewhere in the range. Either way, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto phone projection smartphone mirroring is provided as standard. It's a touchscreen monitor with the usual DAB audio, Bluetooth and informational functions, plus it features voice control and physical shortcut buttons that make it easier to quickly change between the various functions. If you avoid base trim and get yourself satellite navigation built into this setup, then you'll also get an enhanced range of Hyundai Live services that this time around can also brief you on local fuel prices and parking spaces. As before, if you activate the connectable Wi-Fi system to your phone, the Live package can find you 4-day weather forecasts, update you on speed camera locations, get you live traffic information, and offer you a local search function that can direct you to onto anything from a supermarket to a service station. Now, anything this touchscreen can't tell you may well be covered off by the further trip computer screen that is provided between the two main dials in the instrument binnacle. Now, further up the range, this is upgraded into a larger 4.2-inch Supervision TFT display that gives you selectable digital speedo, compass and driver assistance options. You review all that through this multifunction reach and rake adjustable steering wheel, and the ventilation buttons are logically laid out at the bottom of the centre stack there. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but not quite so good is all-round visibility. True, thanks to careful placement of this A-pillar, front three-quarter vision at junctions isn't too bad, but the view out of the back is restricted. No two ways about it. Fortunately, a rear-view camera now comes as standard right across the range, and as long as you avoid entry-level trim, you'll get rear parking sensors too. Cabin practicality is reasonable, with bottle holders in the door pockets, a compartment for your sunglasses, and this storage compartment under the ventilation controls, which contains rather over-prominently presented USB, aux-in and 12-volt sockets. You also get a spacious glove box, this central storage bin with a lift-out top tray, and this pair of cup holders too, although small bottles placed in those will get in the way of your route to the gear lever. Time to move to the rear seat. Now, fortunately, this rearward sloping roof doesn't really impede access that's aided by these wide opening doors. Take a seat back here and it's pretty spacious by class standards. If you've previously owned or test-driven a rival comparably priced Qashqai or Attica, you should notice just how much extra legroom is freed up by this Hyundai's slightly lengthier body. As usual, though, in this sector, a trio of adults will certainly need to be on familiar terms over longer trips, and that's partly due to this raised centre seat cushion, but a third child won't mind that. And when this middle position isn't being used, then there's the opportunity to use this armrest with its integrated pair of cup holders. Rear passengers will also appreciate the provision of their own air vents, the seat heating that you get on top models, and the fact that these seat backs recline for greater comfort on longer journeys. They might be rather less keen on the rather small side windows, but lack of light's not an issue if you can stretch to a top model fitted with a vast panoramic tilting sliding glass roof. And out back, well, raise the tailgate. A little disappointingly, this is only electrically powered with the very priciest models, and you'll find boot space is about average by class standards. It varies a bit depending on the engine you choose. Petrol models offer 513 litres, the 1.6 litre diesel has 484 litres, and this mild hybrid 2 litre diesel offers 459 litres. Now those figures about 5% up on a rival Kia Sportage. To give you some more class perspective on that, a Nissan Qashqai gives you 430 litres, and a Ford Kuga just 406, but a Seat Attica has 510, and a Peugeot 3008 591 litres. The boot opening's large, properly shaped, and it's easily big enough for a big child buggy or a couple of sets of golf clubs. In terms of the weight of the items you can carry, Hyundai quotes a payload of 706 kilos for the two-wheel drive models. Practical touches include tie-down points, a bag hook and a 12-volt socket, plus useful concealed side compartments for valuables. A significant annoyance, though, is that if you need more space and you want to fold down those rear seat backs, there's no boot-accessible remote release handles that you can tug on. In fact, you don't even get a catch on the seat top shoulder, and that means that you have to just stop what you're doing and then go round, open the side door in order to activate the handles on the rear seat bases. On the plus side, though, having those reclining seat backs means that if you need to, you can make the backs a little more upright. And that might make the difference between being able to close this tailgate or not if you're trying to cram cases in on an airport run. Pushing forward, the 60/40 split folding backrest doesn't free up quite as much space as you might be expecting it to, possibly because the seats don't fold completely flat. The seats down load area is 1,503 litres in size on the petrol model. With a 1.6 litre diesel, it's 1,474 litres, and on this 2 litre mild hybrid variant, it's 1,449 litres in size. Tucson pricing sits in the £22,000 to £35,000 bracket. In other words, exactly what you'll pay for most other family-sized SUV models of this kind. For many buyers, though, the real range starting point will be at around £24,000, given the premium of just over $2,300 that's necessary to progress from the entry-level 1.6 litre GDI 132 PS petrol unit to the volume 1.6 litre CRDI 115 PS diesel that most will want. The prices we just quoted apply to the base S-Connect spec trim level that very few buyers want. The vast majority choose one of the mid-range SE nav spec versions, and they have approximate asking prices in the £23,500 to £28,000 bracket. This, we think, represents a sweet spot in the range. With an SE nav spec Tucson, you get a much wider choice of engines. The 1.6 litre CRDI diesel comes either in 115 PS form with manual transmission, or for just over 2,000 more in 136 PS guys with the brand's 7DCT auto gearbox. If you're set on petrol power, the 132 PS normally aspirated 1.6 litre GDI engine is at this level joined by an alternative turbocharged 177 PS TGDI unit. Now this quicker package will set you back around 2,000 more, but it does give you the £1,300 option of 7DCT auto transmission. If this Tucson model's relatively value-orientated pricing prompts you to splash out a bit on a more luxury-orientated trim level, then there are two to choose from. Premium spec, that's what we've got here, or top premium SE. Now, pricing with these two top specification levels lies in the £26,000 to £35,000 bracket, and it's these trim options you'll need if you want access to the clever 2-litre CRDI 185 PS 48-volt mild hybrid diesel power plant that we've been trying here. That can only be ordered with a bespoke 8-speed auto gearbox and all-wheel drive, and it prices from around £33,000. Most customers for these upper spec trim levels, though, will be looking at something a bit more affordable than that. Probably the higher output turbocharged petrol and diesel engines that we mentioned earlier. They're both offered with either manual or 7DCT automatic transmission, and they're available only in front-driven form. Now, the kind of pricing we've just talked you through makes this revised Tucson a more effective stepping stone towards the brand's larger 7-seat Santa Fe SUV, which, for reference, is priced from just over £33,000. More relevant for most buyers, though, will be how this Tucson stacks up price-wise against comparable mid-sized SUVs in the Qashqai class. So, let's see. Now, in assessing that, we should probably start with this model's sister design, Kia's Sportage, since under the skin, the two cars are pretty much the same. Now, comparing prices between these two models is difficult because the spec levels are differently orientated. At first glance, the Kia does look a bit cheaper, with a base petrol model Sportage starting price pitched around £1,500 below an equivalent Tucson. Now, that's because base Tucson trim gives you more equipment than you get from a base spec Sportage. Principally autonomous braking. That's only offered on the really pricey versions of the Kia. Ultimately, it depends on what bits you want, but by the time you've crunched the stats, you should find that the value proposition that's offered by these two Korean models is pretty comparable. It is worth pointing out, though, that the Kia offers all-wheel drive with the 1.6-litre TGDI petrol engine. At the launch of this revised Tucson, Hyundai chose not to do that, sticking with a primarily front-driven lineup. Now, for some buyers, that could be significant. It's probable, though, that the cars in this class you're more likely to be considering as an alternative will be the ones that most of the magazines will point you to in the family-orientated mid-sized SUV segment, Nissan's Qashqai and Seat's Attica. Now, both are a little better to drive than this Hyundai, and they'll save you around £2,500. But more significantly, both offer quite a lot less space for your rear passengers and for your luggage, and you would get a little less in terms of equipment too. Three other class favourites, Renault's Qashqai-based Kadjar, Skoda's Karoq and the Peugeot 3008, also cost around about the same as a Tucson in diesel form, and a comparably spec'd Honda HR-V diesel wouldn't save you much either, even though that is quite a lot smaller inside. Citroën C5 Aircross, that is slightly more spacious, but that requires a £700 to £1,200 premium over this Hyundai, depending on your choice of engine. As for your other options in this class, well, the budget brand class entrants in the category, like the MG GS or the SsangYong Tivoli XLV, they simply don't have the style or the build quality to interest a typical Tucson buyer. Slightly nicer SUV models like Mitsubishi's ASX, the Suzuki Vitara and the Suzuki S-Cross, they will all save you significant money over this Hyundai, but they're really a touch too small to properly compete with this Tucson, and they lack this car's polish. Volkswagen T-Roc and Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross models deliver that, and they would probably give you a £1,000 to £2,000 saving, but again, they aren't really family-sized inside. All the other mid-sized SUV options that do give you decent rear seat and luggage space, and which might spring to mind in this category, will cost you a bit more than this Hyundai. A Ford Kuga, a Vauxhall Grandland X, a Volkswagen Tiguan or a Mini Countryman, they'll all typically cost you around £1,000 more. And think in terms of around £1,500 to £2,000 more for most versions of mid-sized SUVs like Mazda CX-5, Honda CR-V and the Jeep Compass. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that the smart styling, the strong build quality and the spacious cabin of this Hyundai gives it an edge on the opposition and justifies the required asking prices, well, then you're going to need to know just how generous the South Korean brand has been when it comes to the specification. So let's take a look at that now. Now, if you're at all put off by this Tucson's entry-level price, then you need to bear in mind that base S-Connect trim does include quite a few things that you'd probably have to pay extra for if you go for a base-trimmed direct rival. To be specific, at that entry point in the range, you get 16-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights, power folding heated mirrors, tinted glass, an alarm and auto dusk sensing headlamps that also have a follow me home feature which lights the way to your front door at night. Inside there's dual zone climate control, a trip computer, front seat height adjustment, leather for the steering wheel and for the gear knob. There's a reclining rear bench and a decent quality 6-speaker DAB stereo that you control via a 7-inch touchscreen display audio system with smart device integration. Now that monitor is also your access point to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, also Bluetooth and a standard rear view camera. An S-Connect spec Tucson also includes a standard 2 further features that you might well find missing on quite a few direct rivals: a space-saver spare wheel and autonomous braking. Now we're going to cover off the safety stuff in detail in a few minutes. Most, though, will want to find the £1,500 premium that's necessary to graduate up to mid-range SE nav trim, if only to get themselves a wider choice of engines that we alluded to earlier. At this level, you get quite a lot more, a smarter look outside, courtesy of larger 17-inch alloy wheels, LED rear tail lamps and rear privacy glass, plus roof rails and silver skid plates front and rear. Other SE nav grade niceties include rear parking sensors, range sensing wipers, an auto dimming rear view mirror and a flex steer system that allows you to alter steering weight. Perhaps most significantly though, at this level in the range you get a larger 8-inch version of that centre dash infotainment touchscreen. Now that monitor additionally adds full navigation plus a traffic messaging channel and a full suite of Hyundai Alive services. Now these will give you speed camera locations and alerts, a local search function and weather forecasts. Plus, this time around, the Live Services package has been updated to show the price of fuel at a nearby filling station, as well as the location and the real-time availability of parking spaces. Beyond this level in the range lie the premium models that include leather seats that are power adjustable in the front and also heated in the back, plus 18-inch wheels, front parking sensors, keyless entry, an electric parking brake, an upgraded colour screen in the centre of the instrument binnacle. There's also a wireless charging pad and an 8-speaker Krell premium audio system with a subwoofer. Premium SE variants add to that tally with bi-LED headlamps, electric tailgate, a surround view monitor, a heated steering wheel, ventilated seats that cool you in summer, and a huge panoramic glass roof with an electric tilt and slide function. Automatic versions also get adaptive smart cruise control too. On to options. Now you'll almost certainly be paying your Hyundai dealer more for your choice of paint colour because only one solid shade comes as standard, solid polar white. Otherwise it'll be a question of paying extra for one of the optional metallic or pearl paint colours. Now we particularly like this test car's olivine grey pearl shade. Aesthetic touches you can add include brushed silver garnishing for the door mirrors and the side trim, or even special side trim lines with a chrome optic that projects onto the tarmac. Plus there are various alternative 16, 17, 18 and 19-inch wheel designs. Roof crossbars are on offer of course, and to them you can add bike carriers and a roof box. Specify a tow bar and you can also add a bike carrier to that. You might also want to specify mud flaps, side steps and door handle recess protection, and with the top premium trimmed variants, the leather seat facings can be specified in grey to lighten the cabin a bit, and that's what we've got here. On to safety features. Now, like other Hyundais, this one achieved a full 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating, helped by a tough, rigid body shell construction and a pretty complete roster of safety provision. Now, the key change with this revised model, and as I mentioned earlier, the thing that separates it from most versions of its Kia Sportage Korean stablemate, is that AEB, autonomous emergency braking, is now fitted as standard right across the range. Now, this works between 44 and 112 miles an hour to constantly scan the road ahead of you for accident hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you're unable to, then the brakes will be automatically applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Another camera safety feature that's standard on a base Tucson that you don't get on a base trim Sportage is lane keep assist. And that's there to alert dozy drivers who might be veering out of their lanes on the highway. Avoid entry-level trim and you get 3 further key features. Static cornering lights that at night project a beam of light in the direction you want to travel. Driver attention alert, which constantly scans your driving reactions, and if fatigue's detected, will prompt you to stop for a restorative coffee. And a speed limit information system that uses a front camera and information from the sat-nav to picture road signs as you pass them and display them on the dash. We should cover off all the more expected safety stuff too. All models get twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus Hyundai's VSM, Vehicle Stability Management System, which combines ESC stability control with the electric power steering system to help keep the vehicle under control in emergency manoeuvres. There's ABS braking too, of course, and that includes brake assist to help in emergency stops. And those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard lights. ISOFIX child seat fastenings, tyre pressure monitoring, a pedestrian-friendly active bonnet, and hill start assist control, which stops you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, are all additional features that make the team sheet. Off-road, downhill brake control setup is on hand to ease you down slippery slopes, and if you're towing, a trailer stability control system eliminates trailer sway. With a plush premium model, you get 2 other camera-driven electronic safety systems. There's a blind spot detection setup to stop you from dangerously pulling out in front of another vehicle. And there's a rear cross-traffic alert system that'll warn you of oncoming traffic if you're reversing out of a space. With flagship premium SE trim, you also get high beam assist to automatically dip your headlights for you at night. Hyundai is keen to talk about the adoption of mild hybrid technology at the top of the range with this revised TL Series Tucson model, but of greater significance is the development of more relevance further down the lineup, the introduction of the brand's latest Smart Stream Series 1.6-litre CRDI diesel. Now, the Koreans had to create this power plant in a form that would meet the stricter Euro 6D temp emission standard, so they've needed to include within it selective catalytic reduction, active emissions control technology that uses a urea additive that virtually eradicates all NOx emissions. You need to top up this additive in a special tank every 5,000 miles. Plus, as with all current Tucson variants, there's standard ISG, intelligent stop-and-go technology that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights maybe. Bear in mind, though, that won't function after a cold start or if the air conditioner is working particularly hard. So, how much more cleaner and more frugal has all this engineering effort made a 1.6-litre CRDI diesel Tucson in comparison to the previous 1.7-litre model? When in truth it's difficult to say because the way fuel and efficiency stats are measured is different these days. All we can do is give you the official figures that Hyundai has given to us, calculated on the new WLTP, World Harmonised Light Vehicle Test Procedure Cycle, but converted back to the most recent new European driving cycle NEDC 2.0 spec, since that's what a lot of rival models are still using. In both 115 PS and 136 PS guises, a manual front-driven Tucson 1.6 CRDI manages 57.6 mpg on the combined cycle and about 130 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now those readings improve to 58.9 mpg and 125 grams per kilometre if you specify 7 DCT automatic transmission. Now we have to point out that those stats still see a Tucson lagging some way behind the efficiency class standard. A rival Peugeot 3008 Blue HDI 130, for example, manages 68.9 mpg and 108 grams per kilometre. It's also interesting to see just how far a Tucson 1.6 litre CRDI's efficiency figures are away from those of a similarly sized Hyundai i30 family hatch with pretty much exactly the same engine and drivetrain. That i30 is able to return over 65 mpg and 112 grams per kilometre of CO2, although that is with the benefit of a special blue drive pack that this Tucson can't have. Now that includes low rolling resistance tyres, better aerodynamics and an active air flap in the front grille, all of which make quite a difference. We would suggest that Hyundai finds a way of engineering that into the Tucson range as soon as possible. But of course, that would only make so much difference. This SUV is, after all, nearly 200 kilos heavier than its family hatch showroom stablemate, and that is an awful lot of extra bulk to carry about. To be fair though, that is a kind of penalty that all crossovers in this class carry around when they're compared to the family hatches that they're based on. So as a buyer, you just have to make a judgment as to whether the extra style and the extra space justifies the inevitable running cost efficiency penalty. So let's give you the figures that you'll need to make that judgment if your interest lies with the petrol-powered variants in the range. Now, the base 132 PS 1.6 litre GDI version betrays the old tech nature of its mechanicals with a very unremarkable set of stats: 39.8 mpg on the combined cycle and 162 grams per kilometre of CO2. You'll do hardly any worse by opting for the much more modern 177 PS 1.6 litre TGDI petrol derivative, which returns 37.7 mpg and 173 grams per kilometre in front-driven manual form, or 40.4 mpg and 161 grams per kilometre as an automatic. Now we should say a few more words about this top 48-volt mild hybrid diesel version, since Hyundai has gone to so much trouble to develop it. The official efficiency stats, to be frank, aren't especially eye-catching: 49.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 151 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, as so often happens with mild hybrid electrification, the additional weight of the extra parts needed tends to somewhat negate the efficiency advantage that the technology provides. Hyundai claims that the 48-volt setup can improve efficiency by up to 4%. That's not a huge gain, and to be frank, we haven't seen any evidence of it in our time with this car. Now, when we tested the original version of this TL Series Tucson back in 2016 with a conventional 2-litre CRDI diesel engine, the returns were actually a little different from those of this mild hybrid version, if not actually slightly better. Still, all technological advances have to start somewhere, and when Hyundai extends this electrified tech to engines lower down the range, or incorporates plug-in functionality with this one, then the technology's potential benefits will surely become a lot more obvious. Apparently, the 1.6 litre diesel is the next unit that's scheduled to get this tech. Just to recap, in case you didn't hear us explaining how it works in our driving experience section, the whole system is based around mating the combustion power plant with a mild hybrid starter generator, or MHSG unit, which is linked up to a compact little 48-volt lithium-ion battery. Now, this can store energy that's generated when decelerating, under braking, or when coasting, and then deploy it to give a 16 PS power boost when it's needed, reducing the load on the engine and theoretically improving economy. The battery and the MHSG also support a moving stop and start function, which automatically turns off the engine during in-gear deceleration and braking. Now, unfortunately, there's no infotainment screen display to show all this working, nor on any Tucson does that central monitor have any sort of fuel economy screen to show the success of any recent efforts of frugality, and that's something that seems like a particular omission on this mild hybrid variant. What else do you need to know about cost of ownership issues across the Tucson range? Likely residual values. Well, they're a lot higher than they used to be on mainstream Hyundai models. Independent experts reckon that after 3 years and 60,000 miles, a volume SE nav spec 1.6-litre GDI Tucson will still be worth £10,375, or 45% of its original value, and that's very competitive by class standards. When it comes to servicing, the petrol variants need regular garage visits every 12 months or 10,000 miles, while the diesel engines double that mileage to 20,000. If you want to budget ahead for routine maintenance, then there are various Hyundai Sense packages which offer fixed price servicing over 2, 3 or 5 year periods. Now you can pay for that plan monthly, and you can add MOTs into the 3 and 5 year plans for an extra fee. What else do you need to know? Well, let's talk warranties. Now, most cars in this class come only with an unimpressive 3-year, 60,000 mile deal. With this Tucson, in contrast, a much more complete peace of mind package comes as standard, thanks to one of the best customer assurance plans in the industry. The 5-year triple care warranty includes 5 years of mechanical cover with no mileage limit. There are annual vehicle health checks and roadside assistance. The rival Kia Sportage offers an apparently even better 7-year package, but do bear in mind that that comes with a 100,000 mile limit. It only covers the engine and the gearbox, and it can't offer the same kind of breakdown cover. And finally, well, you might also want to note that roadside assistance cover is limited to 1 year, but you do get a long 12-year bodywork warranty. As for insurance, well, despite the inclusion of autonomous braking across the Tucson range, the groupings are significantly higher than they would be for that rival Kia Sportage, which largely doesn't have that key safety feature. That makes absolutely no sense to us at all. Tucson groupings start at Group 20E for the 1.6-litre GDI petrol model. The 1.6-litre TGDI petrol variant is rated at either Group 25E or 26E, depending on spec. For the base 115 PS 1.6-litre CRDI diesel, you're looking at Group 20E or 21E. For the 1.6-litre CRDI engine with 136 PS, ratings vary between 23E and 24E, depending on spec. And this 2-litre CRDI 48-volt mild hybrid model is rated at Group 31E. So, what do we have? The tough looks of an SUV, the sensible practicality of a 5-seat people carrier, and much of the affordability of a family hatchback. Well, these are virtues that most mid-sized crossover models offer, but this one delivers them with more space for less money than the majority of rivals can, which is why this improved Tucson will continue to attract fresh buyers to the Hyundai brand. It's nicely built, it's efficient to run, it's better equipped than most rivals, and the Slovakian factory builds it better too. We also think it's smart of Hyundai to have differentiated this car from its Kia Sportage cousin by including standard autonomous braking across the range. Of course, this Tucson isn't perfect. A class-leading family hatch might offer slightly sharper handling and better all-round visibility, but these aren't deal-breaking issues. More important will be this model's competitive pricing and that lengthy warranty. The improvements made to this design have added a bit of polish without fundamentally altering the appeal a great deal. The fresh SmartStream Series 1.6-litre diesel is a useful improvement, and the mild hybrid diesel technology we've been looking at here gives the brand something fresh to talk about. But all the time that it's limited to the largest engine and the priciest variants, it'll be irrelevant for most likely buyers. Now, we look forward to seeing this 48-volt tech added further down the range. In summary then, what we've got here is very much a Hyundai for the modern era. And In this segment, that makes it a car you might find it very difficult to ignore.